Falling COVID case numbers and ramped up vaccines offer real hope in the fight against the pandemic. But the job crisis continues to get worse as almost 1 million people file for unemployment benefits each week. CareerBuilder CEO Irina Novoselsky, who has led the online recruitment company for over 3 years, knows the job market better than just about anybody. To get where she is today, she worked 50-hour weeks at Morgan Stanley to put herself through New York University's Stern School of Business and rose quickly up the ranks at the cloud company Novatex. On this episode of Influencers, Irina joined me to talk about what the recovery will look like, whether more stimulus will make a difference, and how job seekers can make their application stand out. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Influencers. I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to our guest, Irina Novoselsky, and she is the CEO of CareerBuilder. Irina, nice to see you.
Good to see you again, Andy.
So, a lot to talk about on the job front. I guess the big question is the unemployment picture is still pretty bad. How dire is the job market?
You know, we like to look at it in terms of progress, and we're making some progress. We made a lot of progress in the summer, and really with this holiday wave of COVID, we've seen a big setback. And one of the things that all of our clients are looking to is really to get some certainty around the timeline of the vaccinations and COVID, because one of the things that businesses are looking for in planning their 2021 budget is signs and timelines of stability.
Let me ask you a couple questions about that. The vaccine, is the rollout being slower than anticipated? Is that impacting hiring, do you think?
I think it's a combination of, as more and more people are getting COVID or being affected by those in their pods that are getting COVID, we're seeing productivity get impacted. So whether it's more of our employee base is starting to get COVID, or their childcare or their education providers. And so that's slowly coming through companies at a much higher rate than it was earlier. And then the combination of really not having a clear timeline yet on the vaccines is helping companies or forcing companies to really think through their hiring timelines. And so it's a few of these start and stops that we're seeing, where hire fast, okay, hold on, let's watch, hire fast, let's wait and see.
And then also going back to the office, right? I mean, that's being impacted here. How is that affecting hiring plans?
Well, it's definitely impacting candidate plans. One of the things that we surveyed is that 40% of candidates would not work for a company that is not offering a work from home option. And the searches that we've seen candidates conduct on work from home has gone up by 80%. And also the reverse side, employers are putting more flexibility out there. But one of the conversations that we're not seeing as much is there's really huge parts of the population in really big industries that aren't able to offer a work from home option. And so what are those candidates going to be looking at as they consider, do they want to go into one of those industries or not?
But does that confer an advantage to those businesses that are having people in offices?
Definitely. Well, an advantage to those that are offering work from home. And it's also offering actually an advantage to suburban cities. A lot of times middle market companies, small businesses that weren't in major cities were competing with talent with a major zip code. And now, given the flexibility of work from home, how we've shown that productivity can sustain itself, all of a sudden you're seeing middle-sized businesses step up and compete for talent with some of the big guys.
What about seniors in college right now, Irina? That's got to be tough. What are they facing?
It is really hard, especially one of the things that we've spent a lot of time on, and it's really affecting the whole part of the population, but specifically seniors, is they're entering the workforce in this unprecedented time. Many of them will never meet their employers face to face. Virtual hiring events, we are doing those for almost every single one of our clients, which means they're interviewing via Zoom or Teams or whatever their communication practices. And they also come from this disadvantage in some ways where they might not know how to bring up a resume because they don't have the experience set. And so we spend a lot of time working with both employers and candidates of how do you really focus on skills instead of experience.
And how much of this stuff is going to last after COVID?
I think that's the $1 million question, Andy. And some of it is what we're seeing is the flexibility of it, of offering that as part of your brand, as part of your values as a company. That's going to last. I think the days of we're 100% at work and 100% at home, those extremes are going to evolve more towards the middle. You might have summer Fridays, you might have a more flexible workforce allowing people to work a little bit more than standard hours, but that flexibility is what candidates are rewarding employers about. So employers are going to be forced to think outside the lines going forward.
I want to get back to the stimulus package. Do you think that's going to make a meaningful difference for the job market?
I think it's going to have to. There's two things that are really happening is that there was a really big part of the frontline employees during the first several months of COVID and really through July that weren't looking to go back to work because of the stimulus checks that they were getting. They were essentially making more by not putting themselves at risk in these frontline COVID infected industries. And so as the vaccine comes through the country, that proposition is going to become hopefully less and less attractive, and it's going to force some of these candidates to want to come back to work. And the other side on small businesses is really where we're looking from the other side of the stimulus checks. You mentioned the candidate side, but the employer side is also really important because watching that small and medium-sized business sentiment is really important for the economic recovery that we're all going through. And the last few months, it's declined for small businesses, that sentiment index that we all follow.
Do you have any thinking on the amount of the stimulus, too much, too little, or where it should be?
I will tell you that our view and our clients' views, and we work with most of the Fortune 500, it's clarity and transparency is more important even than the number. It's getting out there with a plan and a timeline of how do we get back to some sense of normalcy and stability is what businesses are craving.
Included is the $15 minimum wage. And some people say that kills job growth. What do you think?
We haven't talked a lot in the media and in general is we spend a lot of time talking about work from home roles. But one of the things that this $15 minimum wage starts to open up the conversation around is what about all those workers that are frontline workers? That we want them to come back into those industries. We need them in those industries. And one of the things that we're seeing is a really big migration of those workers not wanting to go into those spaces. They are preferring and opting to go to work from home roles, whether it's call center jobs, whether it's office jobs. And so one of the things that we're seeing is a stimulus to help really even out some of the distribution of the workforce.
Some controversial stuff here, Irina. Some employers have looked to social media to see if prospective employees are members of white national groups or white supremacist groups. Are you hearing about that, and should they do that?
Social media, and we tell this to the candidates, and we tell this as we work with a lot of hiring practices with our clients. Social media is one of the boxes that almost every single recruiting function we work with checks. So if you are, whether you're coming through college and you're graduating, whether you are just out there on social media, you should expect that your potential future employer and your existing employer are checking your social media profiles. One of the things that has become really important and highlighted more in COVID and has been important before is what the company's values are. And so companies are spending a lot more time making sure that not only are they transparently sharing what their values are and continuing to honor those, but also are their employees doing the same? And social media is one of those things that it's out there, it's gonna keep happening. And if you have something that shouldn't be on there, you shouldn't be posting it. But we as leaders want to make sure that our employees are mirroring the values that we have out there.
And you mentioned companies sort of becoming more political, or at least taking a stand politically, or making those views known. How much of that has to do with signaling to their workers where they stand?
I would say, Andy, that at least in my view, it's less about the political nature of it and it's more about the right and wrong. I think as leaders, one of the things that we not only have a responsibility to our employees, but also as leaders of companies is we have this rare opportunity, especially right now with what we call the great rehire, to really change what the workforce looks like in our own companies, what the faces of our workforce look like. And so a lot of this is not political. It's how do we make sure that we have a diverse group of people that are working for us? How do we make sure that it's not just diversity, but also inclusion? And that starts with what we say, how we say it, the holidays that we recommend and that we respect, the words we use, the hiring practices we make. So it's this fulsome and really full view of what it means to be a leader at the company and as a result to be employed at that business.
Some people have suggested that former aides to President Trump might have a hard time getting jobs. Do you think that major employers might shut them out?
I think again, it depends less on your experience and what your values are and what you did. One of the things that we speak a lot about is, you want to make sure that you are pushing forward the right mission, that you are bringing in people that believe in that mission. And that might align with certain companies and it most likely might not align with all of them.
Right. Back to COVID-19 a little bit, Irina. The downturn has hurt low-income workers more than upper-income workers, so it's kind of exacerbating a divide here. Why is that, and what can be done about that, do you think?
And not only the low-income workers, one of the things that we're also seeing is there's really been a divide around just the race inequality that has been happening, right? So the unemployment for Black Americans is almost double that of white Americans. And so we're seeing essentially this hollowing out that's happening. And as far as what can be done from an employer perspective it's a few things. One, it's you want a diverse workforce, you have to advertise where there is diversity, right? One of the things that we talk about CareerBuilder is we happen to be one of the more diverse job boards out there. And so whether it's us or with somebody else, how do you stay in front of where the diverse candidates are? Two, it's really, and we touched on this a little bit, Andy, but this is so critical for where we're going. And as we go into this great rehire and post-COVID years, is really having this openness and flexibility around job mobility. And that comes around the skill set. We, for so long, have been hiring based on experience. And a lot of what that yields is the same demographic outcome for the same type of roles. And one of the things that we have to start moving towards is a skill set view instead of experience. So instead of asking, have you done it? Asking, can you do it? And that starts opening up a completely different pool of candidates. I'll give you one experience, one example that we've done from a technology perspective is, as you know, over the first few months of COVID and really over the last few months is flight attendants have been really impacted by the minimal travel that has been happening. And so there was this whole cohort of workers that were looking for jobs. And so instead of looking on their experience, we did matching based on their skill set, and they had an over 95% match to customer service representatives. So they've never actually done that role based on their resume or their experience, but they had all the underlying skill sets of communication, of problem solving, of logistic handling. And it happens that those customer service reps are one of the highest in demand jobs that we had with not enough supply. And so all of a sudden you're fixing this market mismatch using technology, as long as employers are keeping a little bit more of an open mind around it, and also candidates, so that they're not leaving with, here's what I've done and I'll only interview with that, but here's what I can do. And so we're going to have to see a lot more of that to impact a lot of the changes that need to happen.
Interesting stuff. You said something that caught my ear there, Irina, which is the great rehiring.
Yeah.
Is that what you're calling what we hope to see in 2021?
It is, and it represents not just the bringing back of the American workforce, but also bringing back diversity to all the American companies that are part of this. And so we have spent a lot of time on helping our clients prepare for this great rehire. And some of it is just building pipeline, Andy, because a lot of the questions you asked around the stimulus and the timeline of COVID and when are we going to be back? And the answer is nobody really knows. And so how do you prepare for this uncertainty? And a lot of that is building a talent pool so that when we are ready, you have these people to pull from. And we talk about this often, that in recessions or in economic downturns, the companies that emerge the fastest are those that invest. And whether it's investing in your marketing spend, in your technology, investing in your people can be one of the best returns on investment and one of the most important ones.
Speaking of recovery, Irina, what sectors or companies will fare better or worse than what people expect as we recover?
Gaming companies, we're seeing a really big push. We're seeing companies around anything with financial services and insurance services. It's actually stayed, not only is the recovery expected to be a little better, but we've also seen pretty consistent growth during COVID as well. And then the roles aspect is also really interesting, because sometimes it's not necessarily the industry, but the underlying roles across many different industries. And around the roles, we're seeing a really big push in software developers. Accountants are in a big shortage. So if you're thinking about what to recertify or where to retrain, we post several of these, but there's definitely a lot of these roles that are in high demand and not a lot of supply today.
And you mentioned flight attendants. What about the poor hospitality business? How is that going to recover? What do you anticipate there?
Yeah, we saw some promises of growth in August, and when they started showing up in the top 10, and obviously in Q4, we saw a dip again. But one of the things that hospitality is looking for is they're also building their pipeline for the future. That one of the things they're preparing for is, instead of a U-shaped recovery, a V-shape, that as soon as people are getting vaccinated, there's an expectation that people are going to hit the hospitality sector pretty quickly, of wanting to travel, wanting to get out there, because they've been cooped up for the last several months. So the industries, those industries particularly, are really spending a lot of time with us of how do they plan to have a workforce get to work really quickly, versus some of the other ones are expecting a little bit more of a U.
I want to go back to the diversity points that you were making a little bit, Irina. And last September, you called gender and race inequality in hiring disturbing. And have things started to change as the world has changed as we move into 2021, do you think?
Not enough. I will say that the conversation is continuing to stay top of mind, which is really good to hear. One of the things that I continuously talk to CEOs and CHROs of our clients about is they're asking, where can they continue to get diverse talent? And previously, it was something that was a nice to have of a metric that a company was measuring themselves on, but it is much more top of mind and here to stay from a conversation perspective. But when you look at the data, it's going to be lagging some of the activities that we're seeing, and it's continuing to lag when you look at unemployment. When you look at some of the wage discrepancies, they're really alarming, that the 61 Black Americans are making 61% of median white household income, and that only went up from 57 in the 1970s. So the progress has been really slow over the last few decades, but I am really hopeful and optimistic based on what I'm hearing, that the activity is starting to be not only consistent, but very top of mind for many employers.
I mean, do CEOs get this?
They understand it. And it's one of the most important things that we can do as CEOs. And there's not only is it good for culture and engagement, but it's also good for your bottom line. There is a lot of studies out there that say when you have a diverse pool of talent compared to your competitors that don't, you're outperforming your P&L by 25 to 30%. Your stock prices perform better. Your teams work better. You get more innovation. So there's data, whether it's not only is it a good thing from a morale and an employee perspective, it's also just good for business.
Irina, let me shift gears a little bit and ask you about you. You and your parents immigrated from Ukraine when you were young, and my understanding is you started off as a kid washing cars in your neighborhood. How did that shape the way you approach your work and your career?
Andy, I did anything. If it, I sold water bottles at garage sales, you name it. I was doing it. But it shaped it a lot. It shaped, when I think about when we came here, we came as refugees, as you mentioned, in the late 80s during a recession. My parents didn't know a lot of English. We weren't able to take almost anything with us, so we came with $270 and a few suitcases. And it was interesting to see just so much of my wanting to really work and help drive CareerBuilder came from that early immigration experience, because how do you translate your work experience if you don't have tools to help you do that? And so one of the things I would do with my dad, he had a PhD in engineering, and it's hard to figure out how to take mechanical engineering from Russian to turn it into English. And I would watch him send thousands and thousands of resumes out. And it's really inspiring to see now that we're putting technology in front of people that can just literally help them do that translation by putting in the role, and it helps them write their resume for them. But it's influenced every part of my life. It's influenced from a work ethic, from an appreciation perspective, from a hard work mentality, but it's something that stays with you.
And what do you think the keys to your own success are, Irina? What is your, I mean, it sounds like hard work and determination, definitely, but what is your key skill set?
One of the things that, and we talk about it, but it's something I have a lot of pride in, is the team that I'm able to build, and the team that is willing to come and work with me is really important. And it's a diverse team. It's diverse thought. One of the things that I really spend a lot of time on is how do I hire people that are better, smarter, wiser than me, because the exciting thing about being part of a team is them telling you ideas and pushing you. And it's also exciting for me because we all want to be learning animals. We want to continuously improve, and putting yourself and surrounding yourself with people that push you to do that. It's very contagious, and it feeds off each other. And so that would be one of the biggest things I would say.
And you worked, what, on Wall Street and went to business school at the same time and had to pay for the school and all that, right?
Well, so again, I was putting myself through college, and so I was able to get a job on Wall Street. I actually went to NYU's undergrad business school because it was in New York, and so I knew it would allow me to have internships, and I had jobs that I didn't have a degree, and really leverage those skills instead of that experience talk track that we talked about, but was able to find the minimum wage jobs. Sometimes it was a few of them to help pay for school. And it gave me such a different experience set because I was able to get access to all these different jobs before graduating and working all these different roles. And not only that, but it allowed me also to pay for school, which is always nice when you definitely need to finance your own education.
What advice do you have for others, maybe especially young women who want to achieve that same level of professional success?
The number one thing I would say is believing in yourself, especially coming through finance and moving into operations. It's really important that sometimes you might be the only one at the table that is your first of your kind, whatever it is, the woman, whether you are a man at the table with all women, whether you're Black American, white American, Hispanic, but it's really being focused on believing in yourself and not really taking no for an answer. One of the things I always talk about at CareerBuilder is you're either asking the wrong person or you're asking the wrong question. And so how do you really push through that? And sometimes it's a lot easier to listen to the negative sayers or to the negative perspectives out there than to really continue to believe and push forward. And hard work. A lot of it is hard work. It's continuing to stay at it, more than anybody, Andy. And a little luck doesn't hurt.
All right, let me ask you the most important question of this interview, which is, how did you get your job at CareerBuilder?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I happened to get a phone call from Apollo that owns CareerBuilder and the board of CareerBuilder, and they were looking for somebody that would really believe in the mission, which is about empowering employment. And they wanted somebody to help really capitalize on the growth opportunities that were there for the business. And it's a 25-year-old brand that is pretty well known and one of the leaders in the employment space. And they wanted to bring somebody in that had passion for employment and for what could be really realized with CareerBuilder. And Andy, you asked about my immigrant experience, and those two really overlapped for me. To go through really that kind of childhood that I went through, I have just such an appreciation on how employment can be really a great equalizer on so many different levels. And having an ability to influence that in some way is just something that's really exciting for me. And the team, it's where our mission-driven values come from. It's why we come every day to work to see how we can help have a little bit of an impact on the world we're in.
Let me ask you a little bit more about CareerBuilder. What's the business model? How does it make money?
Yes. So we are a two-sided marketplace. So we are one of the largest job advertising sites. So we have over 160 million candidate profiles. So for candidates, it's absolutely free. They come and look for different job openings. They post their resume. And then on the employer side, we work with the majority of the Fortune 500, most of the small and medium-sized businesses. Again, we're one of the largest, and they essentially pay us to advertise their jobs to those 160 million candidates that we have. So it's essentially a matching service for jobs.
What are mistakes, or maybe the biggest mistake that applicants make?
Not really reviewing what they're posting. Grammar, there is a lot of mistakes on grammar. Not highlighting their skill set is a second one. A lot of people spend a lot of time on their experience, but they don't pull out what is it that they did at their experience, and then really what they're looking for as well. Again, highlighting their skill set. But the employers make a lot of mistakes as well. As one of the things that we've seen as the biggest employer mistakes is the job description, is whether it's written biased or it's not as inclusive as it can be. And it's actually the biggest reason, Andy, that candidates don't click on a job or don't want to apply for a job is based on the job description.
And similar kind of question, what's your top advice for people applying for jobs during the pandemic?
Make yourself as available as possible. So make sure that you are where recruiters are looking, that you are on the top job sites, that you're attending virtual networking events, that you're attending virtual hiring events. And sometimes that means that you might get a few rejections, but you're going into their queue, you're going into their pipeline. And one of the things that we do with all of our clients is we re-engage past candidates. The majority of our matches are based on our recommendation engine, which re-engages candidates. So making sure that you're out there and in front, and also, again, highlighting the skill set. And we talked about this a little bit, but the economy is changing. Roles are changing. Postal readers, and used to be one of the biggest roles out there, and that doesn't exist anymore. And so how do you pivot that if you're in a role that no longer has a lot of demand? How do you make sure that you are considered for your skill set into other industries?
Right. And final question, Irina, you have many more years ahead of you in your career. So I'm going to ask you one of those, again, job interview questions. Where do you see yourself in 10, 15, 20 years? What do you hope to accomplish?
Andy, I will tell you that one of the things that has made me successful and has allowed me to do what I do is I really focus on the present and the now. And it's hard to think too far out. I think one of the important things for me in the role that I do is I really wanted to be part of helping to build American culture. And I feel so grateful to be in this country and have had the opportunities that I do, that in every role that I'm in, I really try to see if I can leave some sort of mark on what has made this country great. And so it's not a great, clear answer for you, Andy, but it's how do I stay focused on what I'm doing? And it's helping employ America and helping get that American rehire going and making sure that I'm getting and giving the best to my employees and leaving a little bit of a mark on a country that's left a huge, huge mark on me.
No, I think it's a great, clear answer. I have to disagree with you. A great answer. Thank you so much, Irina Novoselsky. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure.
You've been watching Influencers. I'm Andy Serwer. We'll see you next time.